On the broadcast tonight, President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev hold summit talks in Astana, where the two leaders agreed to expand joint projects beyond the energy sector. The U.S. Federal Reserve continues to retreat from its stimulus campaign, but sharply cuts its economic forecast for 2014. Iraq makes a formal request for U.S. airstrikes as Sunni insurgents tighten grip on oil refinery. U.S. is said to be weighing the risk. And World Cup at a glance. Defending champion Spain is knocked out of the World Cup by Chile, while the Netherlands secures a spot in the next round by defeating Australia. Early edition begins now. It is 5 a.m. in New York, 5 a.m. in Guayaba, and 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 19th of June here in Seoul. Hello, this is Early Edition at 6, live from Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. President Park Geun-hye currently on a state visit to Kazakhstan, and her counterpart there have agreed to take their economic ties up a notch by expanding joint projects beyond the Central Asian nation's energy sector.
The Kazakh president also gave his backing for President Park's North Korea policies. Our correspondent Choi Sung is traveling with the president, and she sends us this report from Astana.
During a summit meeting in Astana Thursday, President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev first checked up on 3 previously signed joint projects that are worth $10 billion. Seoul asked for Astana's cooperation in speeding up initiatives on the construction of a coal thermal plant and petrochemical complex, along with mining projects off the Kazakh coast near the Caspian Sea. While Seoul considers Kazakhstan a key investment destination in resource-rich Central Asia, Astana has made Korea a role model for its so-called 2050 strategy that aims to make it one of the world's top 30 economic powerhouses. Beyond their energy ventures, Presidents Park and Nazarbayev agreed to sign a rail technology sharing deal that could offer Korean firms the chance to participate in Kazakh railway and transportation infrastructure construction in the future. This, in line with President Park's initiative to link energy and logistics infrastructure across Eurasia to transform the global economic system and assure security on the Korean peninsula. They also discussed working together in areas of medicine, forestry, and visa waivers. Kazakhstan, which voluntarily handed over some 1,000 former Soviet nuclear warheads in the 1990s, reiterated its position of not recognizing North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. It also endorsed President Park's trust-building policies with the North. In an interview with a Kazakh media outlet, the South Korean leader urged Pyongyang to learn from Kazakhstan, which has developed thanks to financial aid from the West and has been given security assurance after giving up its nuclear arms. Wrapping up her state visit to Kazakhstan, President Park will depart for the final leg of her Central Asia tour to Turkmenistan Friday, the first ever visit to the country by a Korean president. Choi Yusun, Arirang News, Astana.
A senior U.S. official is hailing Chinese President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit to South Korea as greatly significant.
At a forum in Washington on Wednesday, Daniel Russell, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, called Xi's trip an extraordinary milestone, adding that it should be helpful in promoting much-needed cooperation on North Korea. This is the first time a senior U.S. official has commented on the Chinese leader's planned visit.
Meanwhile, Japan's Kyodo News, citing an unnamed diplomatic source in Seoul, is reporting on this Thursday that Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit South Korea on July 3rd and 4th. Xi plans to make his first visit to Seoul as president early next month, but his exact schedule has not been officially announced. Now, in Korea's National Assembly on this Thursday, political parties clashed over President Park Geun-hye's ambitious 3-year economic innovation plan on the second day of the 3-day plenary hearing. As our correspondent Kim Young-gil reports, economic democratization and deregulation topped the talking points.
President Park Geun-hye's top election pledge was achieving economic democratization, which calls for limiting the power of family-owned conglomerates and creating a level playing field for smaller firms. But ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker Lee Han-sung asked whether the plan was working.
Isn't economic democratization only favoring the rich and the conglomerates?
One of the government's biggest goals is economic democratization. This policy is not lopsided, but rather fosters support for smaller businesses. The policy has been implemented to improve people's livelihoods.
Opposition party lawmakers were less reserved, calling the plan half-baked and claiming it offers no solutions to the economic problems people are facing. Ruling party lawmakers also asked cabinet members to push ahead with deregulation. They say it's necessary to stimulate the economy and prop up the slumping real estate market. However, lawmaker Hong Jong-hak of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy asked about the effect on household debt.
If we ease restrictions on home loans, what would happen to household debt?
Easing restrictions won't be a big problem, as the government can solve the household debt problem by raising individual incomes, allowing the debtor to prepay their debts.
The restrictions were put into place when household debt was rising at alarming levels. Amid differing views, lawmakers, however, did find some common ground on the need to put measures in place that would restrict retired government officials from gaining employment in the industry they used to regulate. They say such practices contribute to collusive ties between the private and public sectors. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Major investment banks have maintained their growth forecast for the Korean economy at an average of 3.8% this year, despite April's Seoul Affair disaster. Now, 8 leading institutions, including Goldman Sachs and Nomura Research Institute companies, said they expect the Korean economy to continue on the path to recovery, driven by strong exports. However, they did point to lingering risks to the economy's fundamentals, including growing household debt and the falling profitability of exports due to the stronger Korean currency.
And the U.S. Federal Reserve has come out with a relatively upbeat assessment of the U.S. economy in the long term. The Fed says the economy is showing signs of strength after a weak first quarter, but it will still cut its growth outlook for this year. Arirang Lee reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has given a positive outlook for the economy this year, even though the economic growth forecast was slashed. From a projection of 2.9% in March, growth has been cut to between 2.1 and 2.3%. This is the latest from the two-day meeting of the Federal Reserve's policymakers. At a press conference on Wednesday, Fed Chair Janet Yellen, however, expressed the U.S. economy is rebounding and said interest rates, currently near zero, could begin to rise sometime next year. If this happens, it'll be the first rate hike since 2006. The exact timing, though, apparently depends.
There is no mechanical formula whatsoever for what a considerable time means. The answer as to what it means is it depends. It depends on how the economy progresses.
And as widely expected, the Fed cut its monthly bond purchases by another $10 billion to $35 billion, which shows confidence of a recovering economy. The Fed, in the meantime, will keep a watch on economic stability.
Today, Yellen came out and said that volatility may be too low, and we agree. Bond market volatility is very low. The stock market volatility is very low. So any sudden spike or in volatility could cause interest rates to rise pretty sharply.
Growth projections for 2015 and 2016 have been maintained, and Fed officials do forecast a drop in unemployment. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
The Iraqi government is losing ground at a rapid pace to Sunni militant groups that are storming across the country. Desperate for help, the government has officially called on the U.S. for backup in the form of airstrikes. Washington is weighing its options. Our Kwon So-hwa has more.
The U.S. is not quite sure yet how to deal with the worsening conflict in Iraq and has not yet replied to Iraq's formal request for U.S. air power to take on the militant group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. U.S. President Barack Obama has been mulling over how to deal with the crisis as the rebels have taken control of more territory in recent days, as well as Iraq's main oil refinery. On Wednesday, he told top congressional leaders that he does not need permission from lawmakers for any action in Iraq.
The president's been watching what we've been watching for over a year as the situation in Iraq continued to be undermined. And yet nothing has happened to try to reverse it.
Also on Wednesday at a Senate hearing, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey explained the difficulties of launching an attack from the air. The top general, who has extensive experience commanding Iraqi troops, also expressed doubts that the U.S. has enough intelligence right now on potential targets, considering how quickly things have escalated in Iraq. Earlier this week, the U.S. deployed an aircraft carrier and missile ships in the Persian Gulf, leaving open the possibility of manned air or drone strikes on the Sunni militants. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Well, turning our focus to the World Cup 2014, day 7 of the global tournament was once again full of oohs and ahs, but the biggest turn of events?
Defending champion Spain, the dominant global football power for the past 6 years, they were eliminated from World Cup contention with a 2-0 loss to Chile.
Right, for that and more, let's turn to our sports correspondent Song Ji-san. Hola, Ji-san.
Adios Españoles and Viva Chile. As I mentioned on Wednesday, 2 wins, or on the flip side, 2 losses in the group stage means you're certain to keep going or start packing your bags. This was the case in Group B, as the 2 teams, the Netherlands and Chile, won their 2 games entering the knockout round. Spain, along with Australia, will be flying home after they play each other next week in a rather meaningless final group game. The Chile side was just too strong for the defending champions, making Spain look dull, ordinary, in a comfortable 2-0 win in Rio. First half goals from Eduardo Vargas, who plays in Spain's La Liga for Valencia, and Charles Aranguiz put Chile in control, and they never looked in danger of losing their lead. Only 2 countries have ever won back-to-back World Cups, Italy all the way back in the 1930s, and Brazil for the 1958 and 62 World Cups. It was a fierce game in the other Group B match, with the Netherlands beating Australia 3-2 in a pulsating match. Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben both scored in their second straight game. In Group A, Croatia cruised past Cameroon 4-0, but remained in 3rd place in the group behind Brazil and Mexico. The African team are eliminated. With that said, let's take a look at where the teams stand in their groups a week after the World Cup kicked off last Thursday. Now, this year's World Cup is a goal fest. We're seeing many more goals than we have seen in the World Cups gone by. An average of 3 goals have been scored per game so far, raising the bar for the world's top strikers to win the Golden Boot in Brazil. Now, the current leaders are tied at 3 goals each. Those are Germany's Thomas Müller, who scored a hat-trick in the first match against Portugal, and the Netherlands' Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben. The Dutch squad have scored the most goals so far at 8, and Chile's next with 5. And here's a look at today's games. First to kick off is the top 2 in Group C, Colombia and Côte d'Ivoire. Then comes the matches these teams will fight to win. The bottom 2 of Group C and D. That'll be 1, 4, and 7 a.m. on a Friday morning here in Korea. Let's hope the players give us another day to remember with goals, and some more goals. This has been Song Ji-sung with the updates on the World Cup.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
It's another upgrade for smartphone users in Korea, as if they don't already enjoy one of the fastest wireless networks in the world. SK Telecom, Korea's biggest mobile operator, has announced it commercialized an LTE advanced service with a speed of 225 megabits per second. That's 3 times faster than current LTE speeds, and means a 1 gigabyte movie can be downloaded to a smartphone in just 37 seconds. Other mobile carriers in the nation say they'll follow SK's lead in the coming days. Samsung Electronics unveiled on Wednesday an upgraded model of its Galaxy S5 that is specifically optimized for the new LTE technology. LG and Pantech plans to introduce smartphones compatible with the technology starting next month.
Well, sorry about that appearance.
I see you're very enthusiastic about the speedy network we have in Korea.
Right, we are. And, you know, speaking of, we all own smartphones, right? And we do many things with that smart gadget, ranging from web searching, checking emails, and even making bank transactions.
Well, we can't leave out shopping, and retailers and online shopping malls are doing all they can to not miss out on the growing opportunities for mobile revenues. Here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
Korean consumers are increasingly turning to their smartphones to go shopping. They shop in their spare time, during working hours, and on public transportation. Like 27-year-old Kim Geun-hye, who says she has been shopping through her smartphone 5 days a week for the past 6 months.
I use mobile shopping day and night when I'm in the subway going to and from work. Because I spend most of my day working, I don't have the time to go shopping in the traditional way. I buy the necessities, and these days I'm shopping for summer clothes. It's easy and takes less than 5 minutes to buy something.
And Kim is hardly alone. GS Shop, one of Korea's largest online shopping malls, says the number of transactions made on its mobile application surpassed the number of those made through personal computers for the first time ever last month. 11th Street says more than 30% of its total sales comes from mobile shopping, up 10 percentage points from last year. The changing landscape has companies scrambling to come up with new ways to attract customers. 11th Street debuted a service in May that provides data for smartphone users when they window shop on the mobile platform. GS Shop has introduced a customer service menu that makes it easier for users to get questions answered. Kim Jung, Arirang News.
And the smartphone market is going to get even hotter. Samsung and Apple have a new competitor in the cutthroat global smartphone market, and it's none other than online retail giant Amazon.
Long wave up as nothing more than a rumor. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos on Wednesday unveiled the Fire phone at an event in Seattle. Amazon's device has some interesting features that Samsung and Apple phones lack. For instance, the phone's Firefly feature lets users scan barcodes and buy products with a touch of a button, so long as they're available on Amazon's websites.
Right, and these Fire phone is also capable of displaying images in 3D, and that's thanks to 4 specialized cameras that track a person's head movements. And this phone, Fire phone, will be released on July 25th. Now, Korea is famously good at education. In the latest program for International Student Assessment, or PISA rankings for 2012, Korea once again led the 34 industrialized democracy in the OECD, ranking first in both reading and mathematics, which just as it had back in 2006 and 2009.
And this success has earned praise from U.S. President Barack Obama. Yet, here is a paradox. On the ground, local perceptions differ sharply from those outside. In Korea, education is regarded as being in crisis. None of the stakeholders, be it parents, pupils, teachers, employers, or government, are happy with the status quo.
Right, and in the education superintendent's elections earlier this month, against the odds, a progressive candidate won a landslide victory against both conservative incumbent and contender right here in the nation's capital. And across the country, just 4 of the 17 positions for education chiefs went to conservative candidates, though they held 10 from the previous local elections back in 2010.
And we have Dr. Emmanuel Pastrich joining us in the studio to provide us with some insights. Dr. Pastrich is a director of the Asia Institute and professor of comparative literature at Geunhye University. Professor, thank you so much. It's good to see you again.
Same here. It's a pleasure.
All right, so let's first talk about the education superintendent's election results here in Korea. Now, what is your assessment of the results? I mean, what is the Korean public trying to say, giving a landslide victory to the progressive candidates across the nation? I think, for me, change is one word that comes to my mind.
Most certainly, change was behind it, and as you mentioned, 13 out of 17 positions for superintendents have gone to progressive candidates. I think in terms of the background for it, the sinking of the Sewol ferry and this strong emotional sort of ripple that's gone all through Korean society has to be seen as the primary driver behind that. That event, which showed this sort of lack of concern for the fate of these high school students, came to symbolize so many things about the issues in education and Korean society. And I think people really wanted change. I'm not really sure they all knew exactly what that change would be, and we still don't know until we actually get into the process of governance what the actual implications of this change will be.
Well, one hot potato would be the selective autonomous private high schools. That's a mouthful introduced by the former President Lee Myung-bak. And of course, they're going to have fees 3 times more expensive. Right. But of course, better chances of students going into some of the top-notch universities in Korea. Of course, the left side has vowed to abolish them. But what is your assessment of the possible changes to come in terms of this particular subject?
Well, there have been, of course, competing paradigms. One, the private school system, which allows for some differentiation based upon essentially parents' ability to pay and to support. And on the other hand, there's a progressive reform school system, which has also been pursued in places like Seoul. Those are sort of the progressive model as opposed to the conservative model. And we can certainly imagine that there's going to be a lot of debate about it. And because the autonomous private school system is less established, I think there's plenty of potential that it will be considerably modified.
Well, let me ask you this, Professor. So Korea has been stuck in this vicious cycle of educational policy change or a change in direction every time a education superintendent of a different or the opposite political tendency were elected. Now, definitely that's, of course, left the students very confused.
Absolutely.
And of course, taking into consideration the kind of gravity education holds in this society, it's chaotic, really. So what, in your view, needs to be done to break that cycle and for this country to improve its education system?
Right. So we definitely should not imagine that there are any students or parents out there who want their children to go to Hagwon cram schools every night until midnight. This is a result of a system in which if people feel they just have no choice but to do that. So the reform cannot be to just say, well, we're just going to abolish everything, because it would be unfair to the students who are involved in it. So it has to be a more systemic, long-term change. What we really need in Korea, I think, is a long-term policies, right? I mean, not just Korea, of course, but this is one of the major issues. And it's not just in elections, even within local government, people change their positions every 6 months. It's very hard to find people with a specialized plan. And there is no 100-year plan or 5-year plan even for like education. And that's the real challenge, is to say, let's come up with something we can agree on for the next 20 years that we can slowly, systematically implement and address the needs of all students.
Right, something really productive and useful and beneficial for the students, for the young generation of this society and country. All right, Dr. Emmanuel Pastrich, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
You know, a lot of the footballers from other parts of the world are having a hard time adapting to the weather over in Brazil. So let's take a look at the weather forecast and ask Michelle what the Weather Center at the weather to find out why. So Michelle, this is really becoming a hot, not only hot, but humid World Cup event, right?
That's right. Hot and humid temperatures are lingering in the high 20s with a high humidity level of around 60%.
And I hear it's also going to get very wet and slippery on the ground.
Right. Sudden showers are expected in Natal and Sao Paulo with hot temperatures, of course, while it's simply cloudy and foggy in Brasilia. Now, as for the weather conditions here in Korea, rain is in the forecast in both Chuncheon province tomorrow afternoon and the southern regions and Jeju Island in the evening due to the influence of the monsoonal front. Meanwhile, we can expect a cloudy day and daytime highs are expected to rise 3 degrees higher than today. Now, going over to our readings, will top out at 19 and 29 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 27 and 24 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 25, Tokdo at 21, while Mankungang tops out at 18. Well, that's all for now. Michelle, Park Geun, back to you guys.
Thanks, Michelle, and that's all we have for you in this newscast. Thank you for watching. For our viewers in Korea, have a wonderful rest of the evening. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Moon Gon-young. To those of you in other parts of the world, have a great start to your day, and we hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.